This presentation is provided by RCRC and it's funded through the Mental Health Services Act, or MHSA FAST grant, in partnership with California Department of Developmental Services. RCRC is solely responsible for the content of this presentation, and Department of Developmental Services has not developed, reviewed, endorsed, or approved the content. I will let Carrie take it away.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jillian. Happy afternoon, I guess. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. Let's learn about movement. So I'm going to be presenting on movement. So what can we learn about movement? And since it is a smaller group today to do it today, I figured we could make it a little more interactive as possible, just so everybody can gain the most out of this hour and definitely make it a time that's beneficial for everybody. Because I'm definitely one that does more free speech and free text versus reading off of my slides. So I really, really enjoy and definitely always appreciate impromptu questions. So feel free, please share at any time. So a little bit about me. So I am a licensed physical therapist. I specifically worked with pediatrics for 9 years or so, a little more. And I've worked in all settings, truly. I've worked in home, school, clinic-based setting, hospital, every type of setting. So I've had a wide range of seeing different patients, seeing their progress, also being able to look at kids over the lifespan, which is great. And I also work for RL Therapy Group, which is a pediatric company that provides therapy services, physical therapy, occupational, and speech therapy. And with our mission, it's always to provide virtual support to all families and communities through parent empowerment as well as parent support. So that's our main mission. And you'll see a little bit of my philosophy in that as well today when going through the presentation on how to really implement and how to make movement even easier in your little one, make it an easier skill for them, as well as hopefully strengthen your understanding of it as well. So I put this slide in here. I'm going to go back to it, but I figure it's always good to let people know and give maybe people 30 seconds to process what they might want to say or share. Even if you want to use the chat, feel free. And maybe Jillian can read it if possible, if someone puts it in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself and say. But again, I'm going to come back to this, I think, in 2 slides or so. But really, I want to know, what was your hope? What was a question? What was the main maybe hope or reason that you came to this webinar today? Or what are any burning questions that you possibly had or still have? Anything of the sort, please feel free to share. Again, I'm going to come back to this slide in about 2 slides and a few so that we can actually incorporate this and again, make the presentation as beneficial as possible for everybody so we can cover everything. All right. So focus for today. So again, my focus is going to be with the hope of supporting you, caregivers, as well as education providers and community resources as well. So supporting all of those who have some effect and have some place or some role within each child's life and their development. So that's the main hope for providing support to everybody here today. So the objectives for today, we're going to review gross motor milestones. So gross motor are large body movements. So you can think of gross motor skills as walking, running, all of those really, really big movements that we do with our body. Those are gross motor movements. I'm also going to be talking about common parent concerns, and then with a big focus on how to integrate when looking at video clips, how to integrate and maybe add in some additional motor development ideas into routines that you're already doing with your little one. All right. So I'm going to come back to this question. So I'll give it just a few minutes of silence. So would anybody like to share what was maybe a question you had coming into today for the webinar, or what was maybe a main reason for coming in today? Anything of the sort that you want to share that would be helpful with really guiding the next hour and making it so that it's truly a time that's beneficial, it's educational for everybody as well as yourself as well. So I'll give it a few seconds.
So actually, I wasn't aware. Hi, I'm Megan.
Hi.
I wasn't aware it was about physical movement and stuff. So my question after you explain that is, how can I help my little guy learn to hop and skip?
That's a great question. Perfect. Okay. I actually have a slide that kind of shows that a little. So we'll strategize with that at the end. So that works perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have anything that they wanted to or questions of this sort? It'll be good to tie into the end if you do.
I don't know if you saw the comment, Carrie, but Emily just says she's a new service coordinator at the regional center and she's just checking out all the resources.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Oops, sorry.
I know our other Megan that we have in here, she is actually part of the regional center as well. And she is our ASL specialist.
Awesome. Okay.
Hard hearing specialist. So.
Perfect. Okay, that's wonderful. Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing, everybody. Okay, that's really helpful, definitely for me to kind of gear really, what is PT? What is it to look for? How can we better help families? And then also to going over at the end, we'll definitely talk about more of that coordination type activity. So skipping, hopping, jumping, galloping. So all of those things. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so I wanted to add in here a little bit on understanding more on how movement is built. So when we think about a baby, a newborn, what we actually think about, I'm actually going to show you one more slide and then go back if I can. So when we think about development for a newborn, an infant, so when a child is in utero, their arms are bent, their knees are bent. So they're in kind of this circular, kind of this tucked position. And they're in that position for quite a lengthy period for the 9 months, but it might be dependent, you know, some children as well. As you get bigger, clearly closer to the 9 months, there's going to be more restriction and less movement from children. But just in general, we would think that in utero, they have more of this flex position. So arms bent, knee bent. So actually the reason for that happening is because in order for us, and I'm going to go back to this, in order for us to truly develop movement, period, we need strength, we need muscles. And in order for us to use our muscles and to use our body more efficiently, we actually have to have a really strong center. So a really strong core to our body, so our trunk. So you have to have a really strong trunk in order for you to be able to then use your appendages, so your arms or your legs, so everything outside. So I always like to think of it where we want to think of the core as like, or the trunk as like the center. So that's our foundation. And then once we get a really strong foundation with our trunk and our core muscles, then our body can start to work on how do we use everything else? How do we use our head? How do we use our arms? How do we use our legs? And then all in all, what that truly works on is it then helps us to then and learn all these different movement patterns and all these different skills. So truly, in order for us to be able to move, to function, we need to have a good foundation in our trunk, in our core. So I always like to share that because I think it's a really good idea and a really good principle just to think about, because if we're noticing that our little one is having a harder time possibly doing things like standing, or maybe doing more advanced type activities that maybe are galloping, hopping, more balance related, we want to think sometimes, I wonder how their core is. I wonder how their trunk is, because we always want to go back and we always want to think about the foundation. So we want to go back to that foundation and think about how strong that is to then be able to say, okay, can they use their arms great? Can they use their legs great on their own? So I always like to share that, and with this picture as well, because I think it's great to look at and see how when a child is a newborn, they're in this position where their knees and their knees and their arms are bent. So their body's bent, hips, knees, arms. And then you gradually see as they begin to gain more skills, you'll start to see that they kind of extend, they elongate out a little bit. They start to do a lot of tummy time as a newborn, as an infant. Then gradually they'll start to work up to doing more sitting type skills. So they're actually upright at that time against gravity. Next, they're going to try and actually challenge their body to do standing type activities, and then eventually doing standing activities all on their own without support, which would look like walking. And all of these skills within this year time frame have so many opportunities for milestone development. So truly for PT, a lot of the milestones that are gained that really set the foundation for how easy skills can be for a kid happen within the first 0 to 1 year, as well as 0 to 3 years. So it's really important to really be able to support children with their movement within those very early years, because that's what we need. Again, is we need to set a really good foundation for our kids. So what I'm going to do next, so I always like to put this in, and I think it's really good to remind as well. So every child is unique. Every child is different. So what I'm going to be sharing are developmental milestones for gross motor skills. But I really want to emphasize too that I like to share the gross motor milestones, because as I go over them, you'll notice it's a gradual progression of skills. So every child is different. Every child gains skills at a very different time. And I think the most important thing when you look at milestones is, even if your child might not be at the same stage that maybe your neighbor's child is at, or maybe the child that they're with at daycare, you want to be able to just look at your child individually and as a unique individual as well. And you want to be able to look at, okay, if they're at this milestone right here, how can I work to the next one? So I think milestones are really good for giving us the foundation of, I'm going to meet my child where they are with the skill that they're at, but I also want to be knowledgeable on how I can bring them to the next milestone, the next level. So when I go over these, again, milestones are just very kind of general, broad, what a typical child would acquire a skill for, but truly, it varies for each child. So if you can, I think kind of mentally processing the sequence of how skills is gained is really the most helpful part. All right, so we're going to focus on next gross motor milestones for 0 to 5 years. So, okay, so gross motor skills, so 0 to 2. So this is your itty bitty newborn. So truly what they're going to be working on is just a lot of head control. So trying to work on that head control on their tummy. Sometimes when you're feeding them, when you're burping them, also in a slightly upright position, again, trying to work on that head control. And you're going to start to see a little bit of movement from them, where when you lay them down to try and attempt to practice tummy time, you might see them try to do rolling from their side to their back, as well as you'll start to see when they're laying down, trying to move their head. So trying to clear that airway. So moving their head side to side. From 2 to 4 months, they're going to be working on tummy time a lot more. So this should be a skill that they can tolerate a lot more with laying on the ground. Some children, it's a little bit harder of an activity to tolerate right away. So you can always use additional prompts like a boppy or a rolled up towel underneath their chest to help them tolerate the position a little better. You'd hope to see your little one start to do kicking. And we always want to make sure that it's symmetrical. They're using both legs. They're kicking their right leg and their left leg just as much. And you want to also make sure that your child is starting to do activities where they're engaging in their hands and they're engaging in the midline or the middle of their body. So most parents will start to see they're trying to bring their hands up to the middle of their body, sometimes even into their mouth. Kids will start to do during this age too. You're going to see more head control. You're also going to see them start to want to put weight through their legs in standing. And you're also going to see them start to laying from their stomach to their back. 4 to 6 months, the child is going to do, again, more tummy time, because this is how they explore their world, is on their tummy at this point. And you're going to see them gain more head control with bringing their head up to about 90 degrees. You'll also see them start to put weight on their hands. So this is when you see babies laying on their tummy and they're pushing up with their hands to clear their chest. So that's the activity you're going to start to see. On their back, you'll start to see them actually gain interest in their feet as well. So they might bring their feet closer to the midline, which is the center of their body, and they might grab onto their feet, play with their feet. And this is a really important skill for helping your children to actually work on lengthening of those muscles and lengthening of those leg muscles. So these activities are really essential and important for your child to do. They'll start to do more sitting with little support. So our hope is that they won't need as much support anymore. They might now still need a little bit, but not completely dependent on our support. They'll start to put more weight on their legs in standing, and they'll start to do more rolling from their back to their tummy, and they'll start to do pivoting on their tummy. So they'll start to do circling on their tummy. So next, 6 to 8 months, so on their tummy, they're then going to start to do pressing up with just one hand. So they're just going to be able to put weight on one hand while the other hand is grabbing for a toy, playing with a toy, maybe in their mouth. So you'll start to see that they're really gaining that upper body strength for them to be able to put all their weight on one hand. Also on their back, you're going to start to see your little one sometimes try to push their hips up. So it's that position most of the time when you're changing their diaper and it kind of looks like they're squirming away from you or wiggling out and they're kind of thrusting or pushing up their hips. That's actually a really great developmental milestone that strengthens their pelvis and all those muscles around their bottom. You'll start to see them sitting more independently without arm support or with little arm support. They're going to put more weight on their legs and possibly bounce. So bending their knees, they won't be in just a locked position anymore. They'll start to go through the motions of bending and straightening their legs. And also you'll start to see them explore crawling, and primarily this will be backwards. Backwards is always easier to do than forward initially. So as you see in the next milestone, 8 to 10 months, you'll start to see kids actually crawl forward. You'll also see children start to do more holding on while standing. So holding on to the couch or the coffee table. They'll also sit on their own for a longer period of time, 10 minutes or more. So a pretty sufficient amount of time that they can independently be sitting. You'll also see them start to transition from the floor to sitting or sitting to the floor. And this really helps with their independence of just moving around within their space. You're also going to see them start to explore hands and knees, which is called quadruped position. And you'll also start to see them to make some stepping movements when supported underneath their arms or at their tummy. And you'll also see as well them start to pull up to furniture to stand, as well as lowering from furniture to sit down. And then from 10 to 12 months, you'll start to see them do a lot more standing independently, as well as moving on their hands and knees, which is called creeping, as well as walking, holding on to furniture, which is called, you can do island hopping or cruising, are going to be both of those things, as well as seeing your little one walk with hand support. So one hand or two hands. So like I showed you guys, so 0 to 12 months, it's actually a very lengthy, I always like to tell families 0 to 12 months is like the most amount of milestones you're possibly going to see your little one gain, because there's so much within that time that the body needs to gain for our strength, our foundational strength within our tummy. And then also gaining strength from our upper body and our legs as well. So we can start to do those more mobile activities like walking. So what you'll see next when we transition onto our 1-year-old. So when your child's 12 to 15 months, the hope is to see them start to do more walking on their own. So exploring, taking steps on their own. They're also going to explore going up and down stairs, primarily on their hands and knees and their belly first. They'll also start to do more walking longer distances. And you'll also start to see them doing more standing and bending or squatting, and then possibly exploring a little bit more squatting type movements or play. 15 to 18 months, your child will start to do a little more balance type activities. So kicking a ball is one. When we kick a ball, we have to balance on one leg. So that's really the first time in which your child's exploring how to use one side of their body to then be able to balance and do a functional activity on the other side, such as kicking. You'll see them as well start to do walking sideways, so sidestepping or backwards, as well as see them start to do more throwing skills underhand or overhead as well. And with their walking, they'll start to do walking up and down the stairs on their feet at this time. So they'll typically need support from an adult or a handrail, but they'll begin to explore using their feet to go navigate surfaces like stairs. You're also going to see around this time your little one begin to explore running, and running is going to look much more like a hurried walk. So they're going to be a little bit more uncoordinated at this time with their running. But again, a lot of parents really describe it as they just look like they're trying to walk really, really fast. So that's typical for this time. 18 to 20 months, you're going to see them start to do more standing on one foot. So instead of just that singular second where they kick the ball, they might try and stand on one foot for 2 to 3 seconds. And this is going to be with little hand support. They might still need a little bit from you or from a firm surface, but they're really going to be trying to stand on one foot for a longer period of time. And this is a really good period of time when we want to try and promote using both sides equally. So we always, with kids, we want to give them the best foundation possible. We really want to try and promote the child to use their left side and their right side as equally. So we can make both sides just as strong to, again, give them the best foundation possible as they get older and they begin to learn and do more skills. You're also going to see as well your child start to do more squatting type play, so bending their knees. It's going to take a lot of control in their lower legs as well as their bottom. And you're going to see them start to begin to climb things. So the couch, the chairs, kind of everything. It seems to be their personal jungle gym. Okay, so 20 to 24 months, you'll see them start to imitate body movements. So normally this is when sometimes kids will go into daycare or some kind of school, and you'll typically see like those imitations. So like Simon Says, or they have different body part dances for kids. So you'll typically see that's a developmental milestone that children would do around 2. Children will be able to run well at this point in time. They still might look a little uncoordinated, but you would hope that they would look a little more of a clear gait pattern, a little more of a clear walking or running pattern, which means them lifting their feet off of the ground when they're running, not kind of that fast walk where it kind of looks like they're shuffling their feet. You really want to make sure as well at this time that they can stop, because this is the time in which children are becoming very, very mobile and they can do a lot on their own, but safety is a really big piece of that. So we want to make sure that children are able to stop on command, avoid obstacles, all of those things to keep them safe. Children will start to do jumping at this point in time because they've done a lot of squatting, bending play. So they have that strength within their bottom and their lower legs. So jumping will be easier. They'll also start to begin to navigate and play with playground type activity like ladder or slides. They'll also start to use a ride-on toy, which are the ones that they sit on and they can push with their feet. And again, this will be easier for them because they will have done walking, they will have done a lot of squatting type activities. They'll have done a lot of activities of standing up, going back down to the ground, standing up again, coming back down, which is going to give them the lower leg strength they need to be able to do these activities. And then lastly, as well, you'll start to see around 2 children begin to stand on their tiptoes. And I always like to write this disclaimer that we want to see children when they stand on their tiptoes, we want this to be functional. So we don't want children to be on their toes throughout the entirety of the day. So if your child's on their toes, we want it to be functional where they're reaching for something, where they're trying to get something that's a little bit higher. Maybe they're trying to reach for you to be picked up. So we want to see that it's functional related. We don't want to see it where a child is on their toes majority of the day or at least even half of the day, because that can lead to a big imbalance in all of the muscle groups and make balance really challenging for your little one later. 24 to 30 months, you'll start to see them do jumping for more longer distances off different surfaces. They'll also start to become interested, ride a tricycle using the pedals, and also begin to do more ball type skills, so catching skills. 30 to 36 months, we're branching into 3 years. They'll start to do more standing on one leg. So they'll start to do standing on one leg for 5 seconds or more. They'll also begin to do even more avoiding obstacles. So when they're playing with you or they're playing at the park, we would hope that they can avoid obstacles within a second, a millisecond. So if a kid comes out running in front of them, our hope is that they have those balance reactions and strength to be able to stop and not fall, not hit the other child or the obstacle, whatever it might be. So again, all of this strength has really helped everybody from these initial skills. So these initial skills, building your core and your lower body, is a great foundation from all those previous developmental milestones. They begin to climb more playground structures, going up and down stairs, alternating one leg at a time. And they also begin to do more catching type skills. So 3 to 4 is when you're going to see a lot more balance, endurance, and strength skills. So these are going to be your kids that are super functional. They're going to be all over the place, where they're climbing on jungle gyms, climbing on the playground set, where they're going to be jumping over different obstacles, jumping for longer distances. They're going to be walking on balance beams. So they're going to have a really strong balance foundation and a really strong strength foundation for endurance, but also for being able to do skills where they only need to use one side of their body momentarily, or where they need to use all of their muscle strength to maybe create power to do jumping for a farther distance or jumping over an obstacle. Next one is going to be 4 to 5, which this one, you're really going to see your child be independent with navigating all terrains and environments. So this is really the time in which 4 to 5, you're going to see your child do a lot more coordination type activities. So this is where we hope to have them have mastered skills with coordination. So hopping, galloping, skipping, all of those skills. And these are really important skills that need a really core foundation and strength with it in doing balance. So balance on one leg. And a lot of the times clinically, what families will say when they do note that their child's having a harder time with these coordination activities is they'll know, oh yeah, it is really hard for them to do standing on one leg. When they get dressed in the morning and put their pants on, they prefer to sit versus standing and putting their pants on or putting their socks on. So that's something that I always like to support parents with. And it's something to really look at if maybe this is something that's harder for your child as well. Again, with coordination as well, another component that is to be factored in too is the endurance piece of it. So up until this point, the child has gained so many different skills, has truly set a good foundation for their trunk, their core muscles, their upper body muscles, as well as their legs. And the hope at this point is that they have the endurance and the power to do these activities. Because in order to do skipping or in order to do hopping, you need power behind the skill. And then the third component within the coordination is also for children. A lot of it is motor planning. So motor planning is how the body is registering a skill and then providing the body with the input on how to do this skill. So a lot of this just takes maturation. So it takes trying this activity. And a lot of it takes to a visual model of how to do it for children as well. So typically I always like to say children learn by seeing. And I think school is great. I think different opportunities where kids get to play with each other is wonderful, because that's where they truly get to learn from one another and they get to see each other as a model. Okay, so some concerns that I always tend to hear from families are, is my child doing the skills they need to? Are they behind? What can I do? And I like to revert back to using the milestones as just an educational piece. So the milestones should show you what should come next from your child. So if my child is working on doing walking at this point in time, and I'm really hoping to see them start to maybe improve their balance a little more, I know that what's going to come next after being pretty proficient with walking is starting to do balancing like kicking. So I know that I want to next start to encourage my child to practice those activities like kicking, or maybe practice activities like, instead of when I get them dressed in the morning, instead of sitting, maybe I can have them stand next to the bed and they can stand and lift one leg and put on their pants, or they can go ahead and stand and then put on their socks. So either of those options. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you guys, I just like to briefly show some pictures for routines. One of the big focuses that I like to do clinically is I like to find routines for each family and then integrate therapy into that. So I'll get into that just a little bit more, but I'll start with our very little ones. So these are some pictures for our 0 to 1 year olds. And you can see a lot of it within the time that a child is 0 to 1. They're going to be doing a lot of activities on their tummy and on the floor, where they're rolling, where they're crawling, where they're on all fours, where they're sitting. So they're going to have a lot of time on the floor, which is exactly what we want them to do. And this time as well, we really want to encourage them to do these activities, typically through motivation. So what motivates your child? Most children at this age, it's mom or dad or the family that tend to motivate them. So using that time when they're on the floor and they're learning skills and they're playing, using yourself as that motivation and using playtime as an opportunity to really try and get them to participate in these different milestones. So feeding. Definitely after feeding is a good opportunity to try and support a little more tummy time activities while they're sleeping as well. And I think the picture with the mom and the baby on her chest is always a great example, where for sometimes if parents have a hard time with their child tolerating tummy time, you can always modify tummy time to even have them lay on your chest. And that's still considered a very beneficial opportunity for them to practice being on their tummy and tolerating it. And then gradually, as they get better, you can lower the surface where instead of sitting, maybe you're in a reclined position, and then eventually they're flat on the ground. Diaper change is a really good opportunity, like we talked about, with getting children to explore the milestones of bringing their hands and feet to their mouth. This is really important within the 0 to 1 year age range, that we really want to try and engage a child's senses, all their senses. So we really want to engage their vestibular system, which are their ears, as well as their visual system, which are their eyes. So activities when they're changing their diaper are wonderful for getting them to visually engage with where are my feet, where are my hands, and then also with doing activities when they're diaper changing or on the floor. The vestibular system, which is our ears, our movement system, is stimulated anytime we move our head or move our body. So moving our head will stimulate our vestibular system, or even activities like rolling will do that as well. Next, also, like I emphasized, floor play. Floor play really is going to be a great opportunity for these younger ones to gain those skills. And bedtime routines, reading routines, meal preparation routines, meal time, or even TV time. These are good routines as well. And again, I'll show you guys some videos at the end of this. And I like this picture as well, because they're really good opportunity to show how to use standing as a nice opportunity and routine. So for this family, they would always do reading time right before bed. And so as soon as this little one got good enough at standing on his feet with less support, they put him against the couch. And then instead of mom having him sit with her and read, they then transitioned and did reading where she read in front of him. So the book was in front, her face was in front. So it's good for bonding and engagement. And it also helped him to take his first steps. So he took his first steps to get to the book, which was wonderful. Okay, so like I mentioned, routines are going to be really the most helpful time to look at. If I have a specific skill I really want to work on, or I have a specific goal that I really want my child to be able to achieve, it's good to think of that and then think of, okay, what is one time during my day that I maybe do something similar to this? So an example might be, if I want my child to work on stairs, so I really want them to be able to do stairs without my help. So what a lot of families tend to do, which is great, is actually teeth brushing time. So evening time when we brush our teeth, they would use that as the opportunity to have their little one practice stairs by having a step stool next to the sink and empowering and encouraging their child each time to be able to do those stairs with less help each time. And it was something that was very easy and very instinctive for them to do, that was working on the specific goal that they wanted to target at that time. So I'll just go over these very briefly because again, I think the videos are the most helpful. So 1 to 2 years, we're going to see them do a lot more on their feet. They're going to do walking. They're going to start to do some fast walking or running, I'm sorry. They're also going to start to navigate stairs. So thinking about those opportunities and routines that maybe you can encourage that. 2 to 3, you're going to start to see a lot more balance. They're going to start standing on one leg to do kicking. They're going to start doing more jumping. They'll start to explore different toys or equipment like bikes or ride-on toys, and they'll start to be more independent with skills that require balancing on one leg like stairs. Routines for 3 to 4-year-olds too. Within this age range, again, these kids are very, very mobile. And the biggest thing that we really want to focus on here is the balance for children. So progressing that one leg balance, as well as progressing their overall endurance. And if we're working on progressing one leg balance, I always think a really good way to do it that families find to be a great suggestion is actually getting in and out of the car. So encouraging your little one, if it's an appropriate car in terms of the height, encouraging your little one to get in and out of the car. So stepping into the car and then trying to get down from the car versus you picking them up. So it's just a little change, but it's already within your routine. Or when they're getting dressed, again, if we're trying to work on the balance piece, instead of you putting on their pants while they're sitting down or on their bed, encouraging them to stand on their own, lift one leg to put on the pants or put on the socks or take them off. And the last one for 4 to 5-year-olds, these kids are very, very independent. And I like to encourage and empower families to, at this time, try to encourage your child to do as much as they can 100% on their own. If it's mealtime, encourage your child to go get their plate or get whatever utensils they're using and carry it to the table. And the same for bringing it back. That works on balance because they have to hold something while they're walking. I also encourage parents as well, just let your child explore when they're at the park. Let them explore everything that's there because it's truly beneficial to allow your child to explore all the environments that are around them, because this is an age where we hope they have a really strong foundation for their strength and for their endurance. So we just want them to be able to feel comfortable with applying that endurance and strength to all the activities. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share some videos that I find really helpful. And we're going to start with the younger children and then progress from there. Okay. So with this video, so I like to share this one because with our little ones, we always want to consider sometimes our little ones, we don't really know what we can encourage them to do during opportunities. But as you can see, this little one's in his swing. And most families tend to use something like this when they might need a break to go do something else, but they want to keep their child safe. And so what they do in this position is this family encourage their little one to actually play with his hands and feet. And they actually even at 1.2 added a little bell or even added a little sock that he liked to grab off to really draw that visual attention to that activity too. Okay, and our next one is going to be using our routine for bedtime. Right. My apologies, I'm trying to find it. Sorry, one moment, everybody. Okay, there we go. All right, so with this one, so you can see that this is the bedtime routine for this little one. So for him, he's on hands and knees. And the nice thing that they do that's beautiful is the family allows him to pick the book. So they want to work on him getting to move on his own. So instead of them going to pick the book for him, they encourage him to play on hands and knees to go get the book on his own and then come to mom and dad. And the next opportunity that they give him too is with him working on his sitting balance, is they then give him the opportunity with putting the book in front of him to reach for the book. So he has the opportunity to try and reach outside of where his base of support is. So when you're sitting nice and straight, you have a base of support where if you reach too far forward, you'll kind of fall over. So you don't have your center of mass in the middle anymore. But this is something that you really need to be tested in order to gain strength. So this is a great opportunity that you'll see in just a moment as well. They really encourage him to reach for the book as well to try and work on those skills too. Perfect. Okay. And then the next one that we will see as well, that's wonderful, is working on standing balance. So with this family, he has a little toy this time, but normally it's actually their toothbrushing. So they give him a little toothbrush and he uses this toothbrush to just play with and just kind of chew on before his nighttime routine with getting in his pajamas to go to bed. But what mom does, instead of holding him while he's playing with his toothbrush, she places him against the wall to really work on that standing balance to then hopefully try and encourage him to eventually take more steps. Next, we have, I'm going to jump ahead and I'm actually going to do our mealtime and then we'll do our more advanced skills. So with every little one and even your older kids, mealtime is a great routine. So how can you get your little one or your older children to be able to do a little bit more? And with your child, what they do a great job of in this video is they really try and encourage him to help with lifting his own arms to put on the straps versus doing everything for him. Another way to make this work even more on his balance is moving the plate. So you can even move the plate a little more forward to get him to reach for it and use the tummy muscles more, which would again work on that foundational strength to help with all activities. And our next activity is for our older kids. So one thing I really like is looking at these older children. So this little one's riding his tricycle. And what the family did beautiful with is they actually put him on a decline. So we want to make something easy for children, especially when learning it. And they incorporated it into their park playtime, which was fantastic. So this is a great example. Next, which I really think is great, and this activity truly applies for all kids. So I really think regardless of the age of your child, doing mealtime is a really good opportunity to work on strength. So again, like I said in the beginning, your core is your foundation. So we really want to make sure your core is as strong as possible. So if you think about yourself when you are doing groceries, so say you are walking up the stairs or you're even just walking into your house, a flat surface, and you're carrying a gallon of milk versus not carrying a gallon of milk, you tend to feel your core, so your trunk muscles, engaged much, much more during that opportunity when you're carrying that gallon of milk. And that's because it's really tests your body's ability to use your core and to be able to use it for balance. You all over, so you don't lose your balance and fall to the ground. So for all children, getting them to help you with mealtime, so carrying their plates, carrying their box of cereal, helping put away groceries, all of those are really good opportunities for strengthening our muscles within our stomach and the pelvis and the rest of our body as well. So really empowering your children. And then the last two that I like to show. So I think laundry time for our older kids too is a great opportunity, because with our children, it's an opportunity where they get to work on their standing bending. They also get to work on carrying heavier items such as clothes, or maybe even helping to push or carry the laundry basket. And again, this is working on their general strength in their core as well as their lower body. And it's something that children tend to like helping parents with as well. And then the last one for our school age children who might be taking a bus, for those that have taken a bus, or I'm sure everybody remembers, the bus stairs are gigantic. They're so big and they're very, very, very tall, which for a child, it's definitely something that really requires a lot of balancing on one leg And it requires pretty substantial endurance because there's at least a few, 3 or 4 typically. So I like to always give this as an opportunity for families to just try to pause. So if your child's ever having a hard time with an activity, I always recommend pausing first. So giving them the moment to see, can they do this on their own? And then if they're still having a hard time, giving them a little bit of help, not doing it for them, but just giving them a little bit of help. So with this activity with climbing on the steps to get into the school bus, encouraging your child to do it on their own, whether they need to use on both handrails, one handrail. And then if they do need a little bit of help, maybe just giving them a tiny bit. But again, having them practice that balance on one leg to get up and down the stairs, all on their own. Okay. All right. And then the last bit for slides. So like I emphasized in the presentation, routines are typically what has been seen to be the most beneficial in gaining strength for your child. So you do have to think about foundationally, what do I want to work on? So thinking about what would I like to see my child do more of? And then thinking, how can I target that? And you're going to think, how can I target that based on what activities can I do with my child to do that? And then next, I like to share this as a resource. So Regional Center is a wonderful resource. There's a lot of online resources such as the CDC for milestones. First 5 California is a wonderful resource too for looking at milestones as well as development. And then I like to offer too, within RL therapy group, again, we do speech, OT, and PT, and we provide free consultations. So if families do have any questions at all, any concerns on skills for their child, we always provide free consultations, as our main hope and mission statement is to truly support all of the communities that we serve and that are within California. And with that, I will take any specific questions, and we can definitely even relate back to the initial questions as well about coordination from Megan, but I did want to share my information if you did ever want to reach out with any more specific questions. But thank you everybody for your time and attending today.